Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have ASP Isotopes Inc. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol ASPI and is a pre-commercial stage advanced materials company dedicated to the development of technology and processes to produce isotopes for use in multiple industries. Please welcome its CEO, Paul Mann. Nice to see you again, Paul.
Thanks, Anna, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for your interest in our company. So I'll go today through some slide deck, maybe 20 minutes or so, and then we'll go to Q&A after that. So if you can just read the forward-looking disclaimers, that would be fantastic. So we're a public company listed on NASDAQ. And so we'll skip through these slides, these slides fairly quickly. But most people don't know what isotopes are, but we produce isotopes, which are a very special form of chemical, and we'll explain more in a moment exactly what they are and how we sell them. And we have a very proprietary and proven technology of how we produce these isotopes. We have 2 plants in South Africa. We're going to build plants elsewhere around the world. And there are a number of geopolitical tailwinds that are helping our industry right now, or helping Western producers right now. Here's how our group structure looks. And so we kind of have 3 divisions in our company. ASP Isotopes in the middle is where we produce stable isotopes. As I said earlier, we've got 2 plants in South Africa, and they should both start generating free cash flow through this year. We have PET Labs, which is we have a majority stake in PET Labs, which is a radio pharmacy that produces radioisotopes in South Africa. And we're going to invest in that business and hopefully triple the size of it over the next 2 to 3 years. And then Quantum Leap Energy is a subsidiary we created in September, and that's going to focus on nuclear fuels for the future, and particularly HALEU and lithium-6. In terms of our milestones for the year, our goal really is our main goal is to get to cash flow break even. We spent the last 2 years investing in our technology in South Africa, and our goal is to start generating revenues and free cash flows through this year. We also expect to sign more contracts, which will allow us to build bigger plants and more plants in other locations which have cheap and secured and green energy. So isotopes are an interesting industry. Probably most compromised supply chain of any material in the world. 85% of stable isotopes are made by Russia, balanced by Europe, and there's no domestic isotope production in the United States. Where are isotopes used? You touch isotopes every day, but specifically nuclear power, quantum enrichment, quantum computing, nuclear imaging, medicine, all kinds of applications. So what exactly is an isotope? So you'll see here we've depicted an isotope as different M&Ms. So when you dig an element out of the ground, or you take a gas and an element, they may all look the same, but some of them have actually got different numbers of neutrons inside the nucleus, and that changes their physical properties slightly. Not their chemical properties, but physical properties. So let's take silicon as an example. When you dig sand off a beach, that silicon sand, 92% of it is silicon-28. It has a mass of 28. 4.5% is silicon-29, and 3% is silicon-30, has a mass of 30. And what we do in our plant is we enrich a particular isotope by stripping it out or separating it from the other isotopes. So if you think about that, a kilo of sand we dug off the beach, maybe that's worth $1 a kilo. If we take a kilo of silicon-28 enriched to 99.995%, that kilo sells for $600,000 a kilo. Taking carbon as an example, a bag of carbon, so let's say charcoal, maybe that's $1 a kilo as well. A kilo of carbon-14 is $24 million a kilo. So we take really basic, really normal materials, and we turn them into very special materials that certain industries need to perform special tasks. We have 2 technologies to do this with. The first is the aerodynamic separation process. The second is quantum enrichment. So our first process, we put the element into a gas, and we spin that gas in a tube extremely fast, about the speed of sound. And we then put it through various valves and flow directors, and that allows us to strip out the light and heavy isotopes from each other. The second technology we have is quantum enrichment, which uses a laser, and that laser excites or energizes certain isotopes, and we can then pick those isotopes out using difference in electronic charges. So in terms of our technology, we feel our technology is much more cost effective than other ways to enrich isotopes. Traditionally, isotopes have been enriched using a centrifuge. These typically cost billions of dollars. They're huge investments, massive plants, multiple sizes of football pitches each. Our plants are much smaller, they're bespoke, much less capital investment required. They're much simpler. We don't have many moving parts in our plants, makes them much more practical. They're modular and they're scalable, so we can add units to them to expand the capacity as demand for a product grows. And our processes are very environmentally friendly. There's no toxic, nasty waste or nuclear waste which you get from kind of nuclear reactors. This chart kind of shows the isotopes we have of interest, and you'll see that we've got a few isotopes here that'll be available during 2024, and some that are available during 2025. And we expect to start generating significant revenues around the middle of the year. One of the main areas we're focused in is nuclear medicine. You'll see this chart here shows how nuclear medicine has changed over the last sort of several decades. Many years ago, nuclear medicine just really involved diagnostics using something like technetium-99. During the last sort of 10, 15 years, PET scanning and radiopharmaceuticals has become more frequent. That's required different types of isotopes, you'll see. And going forwards, there are a number of medical treatments that are emerging that will require very special medical isotopes. Isotopes that emit beta particles and some of them emit alpha particles to treat various forms of oncology. We expect to be involved in many of these end markets. So when you look at the isotopes of interest, here are the 5 medical isotopes that we expect to produce during the next few years. Carbon-14, molybdenum-100, zinc-68, nickel-64, and ytterbium-176. And each has a role to play in an evolving healthcare industry. So here's a picture of our first plant for carbon-14. This plant will actually produce the entire world's demand of carbon-14, should it need to. You'll see it's small, it's modular. Each of those cases is about 2.2 meters high by 2 meters long by 1 meter wide. And there's a balancer plant behind it that about the same size. But you'll see it's modular, it can be moved easily. These are not large pieces of capex. These are single-digit millions of dollars rather than hundreds of millions or billions. And we've signed a contract for carbon-14 that will start supplying around the middle of the year, second quarter. And that's a take-or-pay contract with a Canadian customer. And that customer would like a minimum of $2.5 million a year of carbon-14. We may supply more. We'll see if the demand is there. And that's a multi-year contract. And as I say, we're very excited to start producing that product fairly soon. Another isotope we get asked lots of questions about is molybdenum-100. One of the most challenged supply chains over the last several decades has been molybdenum-99 and technetium-99. Molybdenum-99 comes out of a nuclear reactor. There are about 10 of these around the world, and it then gets shipped to where it's going to get turned into a final product that the patient uses. Molybdenum-99 has a 66-hour half-life. So every 2.5 days, its value halves in value. That makes it particularly challenging to keep an inventory and to make sure you're getting supply disruptions. We believe we can turn our molybdenum-100 into technetium-99 at the point of care. So you can ship it in a normal FedEx package, you can store it on the shelf and take it when you need it. That has significant advantages, we believe, over traditional way of producing technetium-99. Zinc-68 is another isotope we're excited about. Emerging treatments for cancer are lutetium and actinium-based treatments. Most of these diseases get diagnosed using gallium-68, which has to be produced from zinc-68 in a cyclotron. And we think the market's going to grow significantly over the next sort of 5-10 years. And we would expect to start producing zinc-68 at some point in the next sort of few years or so. And the final isotope we're very excited about in the medical industry is ytterbium-176. We started constructing our ytterbium-176 plant in South Africa. That should start producing product in 2025. And one of the biggest new cancer drugs coming to the market is a beta emitter called lutetium-177. And the best way to make lutetium-177 is from ytterbium-176. And our plant will produce kilogram quantities of ytterbium-176. And as I say, we've got a huge amount of interest and demand for that isotope. The other isotope we're excited about producing as soon as silicon-28 for quantum computing. Quantum computing needs faster semiconductors that are currently available today. In order to make a semiconductor faster, you have to use highly enriched silicon-28. So we've got a lot of interest in silicon-28 from semiconductor companies, and we'd expect to start supplying them later on this year with kilogram quantities of silicon-28. All of our plants today are in South Africa. One of the problems of South Africa is energy security. Our plants do use quite a lot of energy, and our goal is to produce isotopes very cheaply that are very affordable for our customers. So we'd expect to start building plants in a energy secure location like Iceland later on this year, and we're discussing such plans with the government. And we actually have a lot of interest from customers to build plants there for specific isotopes. I'll talk now about Quantum Leap Energy, which is one of our subsidiaries. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that the world needs more energy. Market estimates that the world needs to double its energy production or electricity production by 2050. Has to do that while keeping carbon emissions neutral. In our view, protesting is not going to solve that problem. It involves innovation and investment, and we'd like to be part of that innovation and investment. It's a lot of focus on nuclear power right now. During COP28, 24 countries backed a declaration calling to triple the amount of nuclear power by 2050. Many countries have announced very, very ambitious nuclear expansion plans. And at the same time, the isotope that's used in energy, uranium-235, the United States imports about 90% of its uranium, and China and Russia are responsible for over 50% of that enrichment. So there's a lot of concern over the security of that fuel. Benefits of nuclear should be well understood by everyone, but it's very low carbon, it's constant and controllable, very cheap, and renewable energies such as solar and wind are great when you have sun and when you have wind, but when you don't, you need something else. So nuclear is probably the solution. In our opinion, and I think most other market commentators agree with that SMRs, small modular reactors, are the future of nuclear power. When you think about cars became extremely cheap when the Ford Model T went onto a production line. And when you have production line manufacturing of nuclear power, the cost of the reactors come down dramatically. These reactors are much smaller. You can put them near cities. Involves the problems of transmission lines, huge transmission lines to move energy around the country. And the number of companies are heavily focused on bringing these types of reactors to the market over the next 5 to 10 years. Some of those are shown to the right. TerraPower, that's Bill Gates' company. X-Energy, Cam Garfassian, Rolls-Royce. I'm missing here Oklo, which is Sam Altman's company. But they're all invested billions of dollars into producing these SMRs. One of the problems with SMRs is they typically require a new type of uranium fuel called HALEU, high-assay, low-enriched uranium. And one of the problems with this fuel is there's no Western producer of it. Most of these companies were expecting Russia to supply that fuel. That's no longer possible. And recently, TerraPower has delayed the startup of its SMR by at least 2 years because of the lack of availability of HALEU. The chart to the right here shows the kind of demand that the Nuclear Energy Institute of the United States is estimating companies need. And right now, there is no supply of that fuel. This chart here shows different ways to enrich uranium with our method, quantum enrichment, at the right-hand side. So decades and decades ago, people used gaseous diffusion. These are huge plants, lots of energy. And if you look at the plant in France, there's actually a power station next to it that was required to power that facility. More recently, companies have started using centrifuges, much more energy efficient, much cheaper to build, still very expensive. These plants still cost billions of dollars to build, but they're slightly more energy efficient than using gaseous diffusion. The next 3 columns highlight laser methods to enrich isotopes. And the important line to look at here is the selectivity line. That kind of shows you how effective or how efficacious a process is at enriching isotopes. You'll see for quantum enrichment at the right-hand side, our method, our selectivity is greater than 50, significantly greater than any other process out there. And that allows us to do this really cheaply really efficiently. And so we're building our first QE plant, which is ytterbium 176 in South Africa right now. And that should be commercial next year. The way quantum enrichment works is we shine a laser through a stream of atoms. It puts a positive charge onto one of the isotopes you want to enrich, and that allows you to collect it using a charge collector plate. We think this is the most cost-effective, cheapest way of enriching uranium. One of the biggest advantages of this method is that we believe we can take tails, so depleted tails or depleted nuclear waste, and use that to make HALEU, which really reduces our costs, and I will share some more details on that in a moment. This next chart shows the nuclear fuel supply chain, and you'll see the three components that we're most interested in is the mining, the conversion, and the enrichment. But right now, all of those activities are showing significant stress in terms of supply, demand, and balance. You're seeing uranium prices trade at 10, 20-year highs. You're seeing the conversion price trading at 10-year plus highs, and you're seeing the enrichment prices get to 10-year highs as well. I think what's happened is the industry hasn't invested for 20, 30 years. You see a supply side shock in terms of Russia kind of being pushed out of the market. At the same time, a stagnant industry for the last 20 years suddenly moves to growth, and there's a scramble to try and get a hold of fuel. If HALEU was available, this kind of chart shows how much it would cost to produce, about $18,000 to $20,000 a kilo. These prices are actually as of December 27th, so they're a little out of date. But you'll see the ore cost is about half the price of a kilo of HALEU. Enrichment's about a third, and conversion's about 1/6. And we believe that our process is capable of taking depleted tails, which would negate the need to go and buy expensive ore. Shown here in this picture is depleted tails sitting in Ohio. The US has got 700,000 kilos of tons of depleted tails. And when you think about traditional enrichment processes for traditional reactor, for every kilo of low enriched uranium that goes into a reactor, you take 7 kilos of feedstock, you get 1 kilo of fuel for your reactor and 6 kilos of tails. And these depleted tails can be seen sitting here in this picture. And we believe we can get hold of these tails at a very attractive price and then convert that into HALEU using our quantum enrichment process. And that would make us down to probably the lowest cost producer of HALEU in the world by quite some order of magnitude. And that's really important, because if we're going to get emerging markets to adopt nuclear energy, it has to be at a price that's competitive with hydrocarbon-based energy. And right now, with HALEU costing $20,000 plus per kilo, that's probably not possible. So we have to make this green premium trade to a green discount, and we believe we can do that. And we're very excited about the opportunity to do that. So just to kind of summarize in the last few minutes, we have 2 proven and proprietary technologies that we expect to use to enrich isotopes. We expect to be commercial during the middle of this year. Got multiple geopolitical tailwinds favoring rapid expansion in many different countries. And I say, since incorporation 2 years ago, we've completed the construction of our first plants, and we look forward to becoming a commercial company. So I'll stop there and take any questions, Anna. Thank you for listening.
Great job, Paul. Yes, we do have some questions for you. Let's start with a question from Aaron Martinez asking if you plan to issue shares in Quantum Leap Energy at some point.
Yes, what we've said on Quantum Leap is that Quantum Leap should probably be a separate business to ASP Isotopes. We're likely going to try and spin that out to shareholders at some point. And so shareholders who now have a share in ASPI will then have 2 shares, one in ASPI and one in Quantum Leap. We're trying to work out the most tax efficient way of doing that. So we're going through that process at the moment, but that's our goal. In terms of funding Quantum Leap, most of our customers have said they would like to fund the plants we intend to build. And we'll have to see how that goes over the next sort of several months or so.
And Phil Sanders wants to know who are your customers and how are you growing them?
So right now we've signed 3 commercial contracts. We're probably negotiating, another 5 or 10 more at the moment. So our first contract was with a Canadian customer for carbon-14. The second customer was a US customer for an order of $9 million of product this year. And our third contract is with a Chinese customer, up to $27 million of product a year for up to 25 years. So they're our first three contracts. There aren't many enrichers of isotopes. Most current enrichers are government-owned entities, and they're not really investing in isotopes for medical or general industrial purposes. So we've had a lot of incoming inquiries from customers who need specific isotopes over the next few years, and that's really how we're growing our customer base is really because of the lack of competition and the need they have for these isotopes.
And Elvira says you talk about adding more plants. So how are you preserving them during long shipments? Is there a substantial cost to that?
Yeah, so we've built 2 plants in South Africa and we're building a third now. Future plants are likely going to be in Iceland, as I mentioned a moment ago. We will likely build those plants in South Africa and then ship them to Iceland and then connect them up there and start the plant up. As you saw in that picture, each of those segments is pretty small. It can be put in a shipping container and moved around the world very easily. The shipping costs are relatively small versus the cost of building a plant. And, the cost of energy in Iceland is less than 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is dramatically below the price you pay in South Africa and other regions. So that'll make us a really competitively priced location. So, it's not really expensive to ship the plants. We'd also expect most of our plants in Iceland to be funded by the customers as well. We're talking to a number of customers right now, potential customers who would like access to a certain isotope. We'd expect them to put down a significant payment to have economics in the plant, and then we'd finance the balance of the plant using debt. Our goal here is to use other people's balance sheet to grow our business.
We've got some questions about the science. Tom O'Brien says the enriched isotopes are greatly increased in value. Are the isotopes unusable in any situation in a pre-enriched state? Yeah, so a normal semiconductor uses normal silane at 92.2%. So there is a use for that. But to make a super fast semiconductor, you have to use 99.995% enriched silicon-28. So there is a demand for the feedstock, but when we turn it into a highly enriched isotope, obviously the value grows dramatically. So yeah. And Max Pierce says, what's the cost to enrich an isotope versus the increase in value? Is it safe to say that it's about 10% of the sale price? Yes, we haven't given exact guidance, and it depends upon the isotope. But think about a pharmaceutical-like margin. So we make very good gross margins, better than 70%. And yeah, so we're very happy with and it's even in South Africa where our energy costs are quite high. And Rob Silva says, when you say produce, he wants to understand you're enhancing and producing a higher quality version of the element. Is that correct? I guess so, yeah. I mean, so there are 3 isotopes in silicon, and we managed to separate it so our product is just one isotope, and that has special attributes the customer needs. So yeah, we kind of upgrade a normal commodity product into something that's very specialized that customers need and are prepared to pay a large amount of money for. Melissa asks, does the switch from fossil fuels to nuclear power by many countries have an impact on your demand? Yeah, so obviously, greater demand for nuclear power increases the demand for enriched uranium, and that increases the demand for HALEU and for our products. So it's absolutely, and a lot of countries are trying to increase their uranium, their use of nuclear power right now. I think the World Nuclear Association is now predicting 3% growth per year out to 2050 in nuclear power. And historically, it's been flat for the last several years. So we're really going into a period of strong demand for nuclear power. And I would argue that the WNA estimates look a little conservative in my view. Brian Russell asks if you can talk. All right, everyone, we are back. Sorry about that. Paul is across the world from where I am. So, Paul, let's get back into the question from Brian Russell. Can you talk about ramping up to produce or enhance a specific element? Is it the same per element? Is there a sort of template or process that can be repeated? Yeah, I would say there's a template or process that can be repeated. So all of our plants are more similar than they are different. But each element requires a different
some unique different processes. So our first step is to turn that element into a gas, and that gas is going to be different depending on what element we decide to enrich. And then the geometries and shapes of some of the components inside the plant are different depending on the molecular mass of the element. And so there are slight differences, but the plants are generally more similar than they are different.
Lance wants to know, what kind of competition do you have? Who are the whales and how will you grow market share?
Yeah, so luckily we don't have that much competition. So Rosatom, which is the Russian nuclear company, they're our biggest competitor. And then Urenco, which is a third owned by the UK government, the Germans, and Netherlands government, are also a competitor. So this isn't an industry where there's a lot of competition, and barriers to entry here are extremely high. What we use is dual use technology, so it's controlled by the International Atomic Energy Agency and also by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And so building a plant takes government approvals and a lot of time in terms of getting the specific knowledge, know-how, and capabilities.
Question from John Seaburn. For your QLE business, can you please discuss the steps necessary to go from a MOU to a signed contract with your prospective SMR customers? Is there a pilot project that needs to meet specific criteria first? And if so, who will be funding the program? Last question is, when do you expect these MOUs to convert to an official contractual relationship?
Yeah, so I'd expect them to convert in 2025 is my guess. And I think what we need to do before we can convert them into final orders is really get a better idea of the production capabilities, quantities from each plant, the timing of the plant, the certainty of supply, those kind of things. And that will all become much clearer during the next 6-12 months. We have a good idea what's happening. We haven't really announced it yet, and we'll make those announcements during the next 12 months, and that should allow us then to sign firm contracts with these customers.
Well, Paul, we have a comment from Aaron Martinez saying you do a good job with continued communication with shareholders. That's been a value. So thank you for that, and we'd love to give you an opportunity for some closing remarks.
Yes, so thank you for your interest, and we've got an exciting year ahead of us. We've got a lot to do as a company, but hopefully this time next year we're a profitable company with a number of plants, a number of customers, and hoping help solve some of the world's real challenges in advancing society. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. We look forward to following you along in the near future. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Okay, everyone, we'll be right back with our next